So the conversation that you just heard was about how to make experiences more personal for a customer. But I think the other important lesson that we need to dwell upon is the ability to face failure and to move on from it. I think the biggest example out there in terms of retail giants is Apple, a company that went through hell and back, literally, and created an iconic brand for themselves. There's another story out there, and this one is from the online world. I don't know how many of you have heard of the name Sarah Blakely. Anyone here who's heard that name? No? Just a couple of people? Okay. Sarah Blakely is the CEO of Spanx, which is an inner shaping wear for women. It's a billion-dollar company. And the one story that she shared about her success was how she would come back from school every day, and her father would ask her, so what did you do in school today? And she said, well, I came last at a game, or I flunked math, and he would say, that's fantastic, high five. It's the ability to face your failures that really bumps you up to success. And here's someone who's going to be talking about that in greater detail. May I invite on stage Anurag Batra, who's Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of Business World.
Thank you. How many of you are awake? Most of you. So the only reason Amitabh Taneja invited me is because stand-up comedians charge a lot of money these days, you know. That's the reason. The other reason Amitabh Taneja invited me is because there are lots of stall owners there, lots of sponsors, and he wanted to scare the ones that are not paid on time. These are really the two reasons he invited me. On a serious note, it's my honor and privilege to be here. Amitabh is a close friend for many, many years, and this is my first time at the Images Retail Forum. I've known about it for 10 years, and I'm quite happy to be here. I met a friend of mine, Hemant, and many other friends. So when I'm talking to you, Amitabh has asked me to talk about failure. So you can imagine what he thinks about me, right? So I have a challenge today when I'm talking to you. I have a dilemma. This is the second day of a conference. It's been raining in Bombay. You're waiting for the pretty minister, right? Rich minister, rich husband, right? So I have a dilemma. Do you know what the dilemma is? Or you don't know what the dilemma is? You don't know? It's the same dilemma the 8th husband of Elizabeth Taylor faced on the night of the honeymoon. Do you know what the dilemma was? Do you know what the dilemma was? Or you don't know? Yes or no? Binary answer. No. So on the night of the honeymoon, the 8th husband of Elizabeth Taylor said to Elizabeth Taylor, darling, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I hope I make it interesting. So I hope whatever I say over the next 15 odd minutes, I make it interesting and relevant. I don't know too much about retail. I basically don't know too much about anything. I want to give you that disclaimer. Second, Amitabh wanted to make me do a PowerPoint presentation, but a friend of mine told me just before I came to the conference that PowerPoint presentations are made by people who are neither powerful nor have a point of view. I'm certainly not one of them. I'm Arnab Goswami's friend. By the way, the third reason he invited me was because he couldn't get Arnab Goswami. So he said, let's call equally obnoxious person like me. So these were the three reasons. But coming back, I'm going to, most of you know me as Exchange for Media, Business World I acquired 3 years back. So I'm going to talk to you about failure, innovation, and my pet theme that India has not produced a product company. How many of you agree that India has not produced a product company? So I don't know enough about retail, I must say. I know I run a business magazine, I read a lot. I ran an advertising, marketing, media company. So I know reasonably well, but I'm not an expert on retail, so I must do that disclaimer. So how many of you agree there's no product company from India? Do you agree? Only one person agrees. Rest of all of you feel there is a product company. Can you give me the name of one product company from India in any domain? Is there a product company? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes? Give me, sir. You're the first one I met in a decade. Which one? That's a brand. That's not a product company. There's a distinction. That's not a product. That's a brand. I think something that was invented, I'm talking of a product. I'm not talking of a brand. Of course, India's produced tremendous brands. Latest being Narendra Modi, right? So there are brands, umpteen number of brands, right from, I can start from medieval ages and come to now. But so would you agree there's no product company? Yes or no? So give me the name of one product company. Huh? Yeah, these are not. Okay. So the way you define a product and the way I define a classical definition of product, I think there's a disconnect. And because I'm speaking, you'll have to agree with my definition of product and go with me. Okay, let me ask the question a different. How many of you believe that we have a Silicon Valley in India? Or let's say we have innovation in India. Because really, we're talking of retail, and retail in some way innovates a lot, in the environment that we operate in. But still, I believe if the next product company has to come out from this retail ecosystem, we have to innovate very differently. And that's why I'm asking this. So how many of you believe there is a Silicon Valley in India? Is there a Silicon Valley, yes or no? No. So at least the ones that agree with me, I'll go with them. I believe there is no Silicon Valley in India. So I'm going to talk to you about my journey. And through that, I'm going to talk to you about innovation, failure, and the product company that I always talk of. I did what most Indians do. I went to an engineering school and then tried to figure out what I want to do in life. And after that, as my parents had told me, do an MTech or an MBA, I went to a business school. I got in when the quality control was bad. I'm from the first batch of that business school. I went to a school called MDI. In spite of people like me, my friend Ajay Kaul was telling me it's a good school. So I went to MDI in '94. And since then, over the last 22 years, I've lost a lot of hair, right? So I'm going to talk to you about how I lost hair. And how many of you want to be entrepreneurs? I believe some of you are entrepreneurs and some of you, I tried to get the audience profile, but I was given a very broad answer. But how many of you want to be entrepreneurs? 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 people. That means 30, 40 people. Some don't raise their hand because their bosses might be here. So, I used to write a column for Dare magazine for 5 years. Then I used to write for Entrepreneur for 3 years. Both of them shut down, so I don't write enough for Business World. But jokes apart, I do write for Business World now. When you write columns, I write columns about people. If I meet someone, if something really gets my goat or I get excited about something, I write about those things. So I wrote this column and I try to write about things that I experience personally. I don't write about theoretical things. So I wrote this column and let me ask you this question. And in that I wrote, I asked this question, what is the similarity between sex and entrepreneurship? What is the similarity between sex and entrepreneurship? Is there a similarity, first of all? Yes or no? Indians are very hypocritical. We really watch the most porn in the world. And, I did this to wake most of you up who were sleeping, But what is the similarity between sex and entrepreneurship? Huh? It's fun. For whom? No, kidding. Some more? I could do a book with the responses I get from these. But good answer. But yes, that's not the answer I'm looking for, but good answer. Yes, sir. How do you know, sir? Just kidding. So I wrote in the column, I said the similarity between sex and entrepreneurship is a lot of people talk about it, but very few people do it. And very few people do it well, and very few people do it for the right reason, that is love. So I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, the reason I'm talking of failure, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and my favorite theme of building a product company, and I have done angel investment in some companies, let's see where they go in the next few months. But I'm going to talk to you about, as I said, my own journey and through that relate. So I told you I went to an engineering school, I went to a business school, and I had a very limited ambition. My limited ambition was to join an IT services firm in sales and marketing. That was my ambition. And my convocation finished in March, and I was joining Mastech, that's the IT services company. I got a campus job from MDI. And there were 3 months, about 2.5 months. I met a friend of mine who introduced me to his friend, who introduced me to his brother-in-law, who was setting up something called Collier's Jardine. I'm sure in this audience, people know what is Collier's Jardine. I go to lots of conferences where people still don't know what is Collier's Jardine. And I met the Australian gentleman. And I came back home, and my dad went to BITS Pilani, but he chose to be a professor. And I told my dad that I'm not going to join Mastech, I'm going to join Collier's Jardine. So my dad asked me, what is Collier's Jardine? I tried to explain to him it's a joint venture with HDFC. It has Island FS as a shareholder. They do consulting, they do research, they do broking. My dad caught on to the broking part. And he said to me in Hindi कि अगर दलाली करनी थी तो इतना पढ़ने लिखने की क्या जरूरत थी. So I came from that traditional mindset where, entrepreneurship was not an option. Doing creative things was not an option. Starting something was not an option. So I grew up in a very traditional family where everybody was in jobs. They did what they liked and they were good at, but nobody wanted to be an entrepreneur. And because I worked in real estate, and dare I say, I was seeing some speakers, and some of the people I hired in their first jobs are here. I won't take their names, but they're very, very close to me. I don't meet them very often for various reasons, but they're very close friends of mine. I won't name them, but they're in the real estate sector. They work with my friend Anuj Puri, so I've possibly given you names. And I joined Colliers, and then I worked with Anuj in JLL. That time, JLL wasn't called JLL, and Anuj is the nicest guys I've worked with. And long story short, I developed very good quality, high net worth relationships. So when I needed money to start my first company, one of the large companies represented here, his primary shareholder wanted to invest. I was 26 and a half, and I went to a lawyer friend of mine who's almost 1 year older than me and said, I want you to look at this contract. He said, how much money do you need, Anurag? I said, 70 lakhs. He said, take it from me. So I met him for breakfast in the morning at the Taj. And then he lives in Nizamuddin. He invited me to Nizamuddin East, his home. He asked me 3 questions. And on Monday morning, gave me a 63 lakh rupee check. As simple as that. Nothing, That's how I started my entrepreneurship journey. And the reason I say that is because that friend had worked with me and had once offered me a lot of money because I did a deal for him. And he said, this is your part of the deal. And I said, I get enough commissions from my company, so I don't need that. So he really took liking to me, and he saw me working, and he'd become a friend of mine. He was as old as me, though friendship is not about age. The reason I'm trying to say this is that when you're working, about 15, 17 of you raised your hand, so I imagine there are 30, 40 of you who want to be entrepreneurs. When you're working now, when you want to be an entrepreneur, one of your friends, in India they say the 3 F's, family, fools and friends. I put the fools in between. I don't know whether they are in the family or friends, but these are 3 categories apart from the institutional mechanisms that fund you. So he gave me money. I started Exchange for Media, and my idea was not to be in the media business. I wanted to build a Commerce One or a Ariba for the media industry. I wanted to build a B2B exchange. That's why we called it. And we tried for 3 years, and it didn't work. We started a newsletter, and then it became a media company. We launched Pitch, we launched Impact, we launched a real estate magazine, a franchising magazine. And in some way, my subconscious dream of being in the media came true. I'm a quizzer. And when I was 8, 10 years old, my parents would read Sunday. Some of you may not know what that is. It was a magazine when I was 8, 10 years old. Illustrated Weekly of India, Dinman, Dharamyug. And, my Hindi is pretty good. Meri Hindi bahut sudrid hai. I tell all my Hindi editor friends that I know Hindi very well, I can write. So really, subconsciously, I wanted to be in media, and that's what happened. The reason I'm telling you this story is that if a middle-class boy like me, I'm neither middle-class nor a boy anymore, but if a middle-class person who grew up in a very academic middle-class family can get here, not that I have a long way to go, I still have some hair left to lose, but 3 years back, about 10 years back, one of India's largest media owners, a very, very close friend of mine, I won't drop his name, but he's India's 2nd largest media owner. Some say he's largest, but in my view, I know a little bit about media, he's the 2nd largest. He called me, I was 32 and a half, 33 then, about 11 years back. And he called me one night at 12:30 and said, Anurag, I'm buying this company. Would you want to be a shareholder in this? And those are days I used to keep my phone next to me. I don't keep it when I go home. I put my phone in the study and don't look at it till the morning. But those are days, I used to keep my phone next to me. And he called me, big guy, and he just become my very close friend. And he I won't tell you the whole story, but he put a seed in my mind. And when Business World was available, I took one meeting to acquire it. I didn't have that much money. I raised an investor, but I realized that culturally I'm very different, so I said no to that money. But I went ahead and bought that company. And again, the last 3 years have, building a company from scratch and taking a company that is there for 32 years and trying to change its culture. I used to be in a business school and I used to think HR, OB, OD is bullshit. I used to think, if you got to do something, you got to do something. And I was born in a state called Haryana. We don't even think after doing. So thinking before doing is out of question, right? It's out of question. In fact, my Twitter handle is Anurag Batra Yo. And a lot of people ask me why. I tell them I was born in Haryana, and that's where they ask, Yo kyo rabbi? But that's a very bad joke. I told you Amitabh invited me because he couldn't afford a stand-up comedian. In fact, I paid him a lot of money to be here, but which I may not pay him, but I'm just kidding. So the reason I'm telling you all this is that subconsciously somewhere I wanted to be in the media industry. Because that's really, I used to read a lot, I used to write a lot. My first exposure to media was when I was working with Anuj. I wrote a piece on real estate education, and I sent it to Economic Times, and it got published. And then I taught a course on real estate. I was 26th at the Master of Finance and Control, Delhi University, on real estate management, real estate financing. It was self-developed out of my working years, which were only 2 at that time. No, about 2.5, right? So really, I've come this far, and those of you know me personally, it is an authentic story. I'm not making anything up. My friend Hemant Sood is there. He knows that every part of this is true. Now, I will come back to my theme of failure and innovation and building a product company. How many of you have problems in life? I'm not asking bosses, I'm asking problems. Not married also. That's not the other. Let me ask you a serious. So it is the happiest audience, only 20% people have problem. Are you giving weed at the check-in? 80% of them don't, have a problem. How many of you have problems in your life? Okay, let me ask, how many of you don't have problems in your life? 7, 8 people, okay. Now, how many of you like to read? I'm in the safe profession, My kids will do okay, I'll be able to pay their fees and all. How many of you heard of a guy called Randy Pausch? 1, 2, 3. So most of you haven't. Have you read the book or have you watched the video? Yeah, so you watched the video. So those of you who don't know, I'm going to play a small clipping. I've seen the video more than 500 times. I've played it more than 200 times. It's a 1 hour, 15-minute video, the original one. Of course, I'm not going to show you 1 hour, 15 minutes. I'm going to show you less than 4 minutes. It's a guy who died 7 years back. His name was Randy Pausch. He was the world's #1 professor on artificial intelligence. He had a lovely wife, 3 beautiful kids, and he was at the prime of his career. He was in the pink of health. He was doing really well. He was the world's #1 expert on gaming. So he was a consultant to Electronic Arts. And one day he was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer, and he had 6 months to live. So he decided to do something, because he was a tenured professor at Carnegie Mellon. At the Carnegie Mellon University, there is a tradition, then you pass out. And he was passing out for very different reasons than usual. He did a last lecture to his students, to his faculty, to his stakeholders, to the people he consults with. And I'm going to show you a small clipping from that. This is not the original one. This is something that he did on the Oprah Winfrey show. Oprah got to know about him, and she invited him on her show. So he did this on her show. I'm going to show you the small clipping of Randy Pausch, and I'm going to talk to you about failure. Can we show that, Randy Pausch? How much time? 5 minutes.
So I'm reprising a talk that I gave in September at Carnegie Mellon University. There's an academic tradition called the last lecture. Hypothetically, if you knew you were going to die and you had one last lecture, what would you say to your students? Well, for me, there's an elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that for me, it wasn't hypothetical. I've been fighting pancreatic cancer. It has now come back after surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. And the doctors tell me there's nothing more to do and I have months to live.
You know, the minister is already here, so I'll tell you what he said. You can go back and watch it. So I really want to, I do what, 70, 80 conferences in a year, as in my company. So I respect time. I was here on time and I'll leave on time, because that's the currency as far as I'm concerned. So Randy says a lot of things, but relevant to developing a product company being a failure. In my view, Randy said a lot of things, but 4 important things. You'll watch the video. It's on YouTube. You can just Google it. He says the most important thing, why have we not built an innovation culture? Why have we not built a product company? One reason, quickly. We haven't built, because in my view, we're a culture, we're a country that only celebrates success. We do not celebrate failure. We tell our kids, I have 2 kids, you can't fail. Till the time we tell our kids, we tell ourselves we can't fail, we can't develop anything spectacular. And our Prime Minister is a great example. He decided to be our Prime Minister. He believed he could be the Prime Minister. He was not afraid of failure. He's still not afraid of failure. He's doing the best he can. Second, Randy says, when you watch the video, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So there is nothing called failure. For those of you who want to be entrepreneurs, want to develop something, everything is an experience. When the enterprise fails, it is the enterprise that fails, not the person. The person always succeeds. He or she will build something. So a lot of conferences we talk technical stuff which helps, but my mission in life is to tell everyone that they should always try being an entrepreneur at least once in a life. The last thing, Randy Pausch says that the brick walls in our mind are there to be broken. A lot of times we put, we can't do this. I'm good at marketing. I'm good at sales. I can't raise finance. When you're an entrepreneur, you're a CEO. You're a chief everything officer. You're an all-rounder. You can bat, bowl, field, decide the team. And I think that is what an entrepreneur does. Last thing, let me say what Elizabeth Taylor said to many of her suitors. I won't keep you long. Randy Pausch says that the mission of life should be to help other people. I wrote a piece called The Introduction Capital, and the gist was, if you help other people grow, God helps you grow. So I want to leave you with that thought and say, if you can help everybody else in this room grow, you will grow. And whatever I'm saying to you, I live my life like that. And there are some friends of mine in the room. They know that everything I'm saying, I try and do that. So I want to leave you with this thought of dreaming big, failing early, and helping other people. If you do that, I'm sure you'll be able to build innovative businesses, product companies, and something that lasts beyond you. Thank you. God bless you. I kept to my time.